الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين أبو القاسم محمد صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I've been reminded several times this week of an old story that you all know. And it's the story of the elephant in the room. And the room is darkened, and a group of men go in, feeling about, and they each describe something different. And I've always thought there's something lacking from this story. And so I remodeled it. And what I did was I added a man who in this world, the world of lights and distractions, is called blind. He can't see what's in front of him, and normally he'll find things by feeling, but not just grabbing hold of one part of a thing, by using all the senses he has to perceive what is there. And I thought, this blind man standing in a darkened room can hear the others scrabbling about and shouting things out. I won't go into what they shouted out or what they touched. But he listens. He's using a different sense. And he says, MashaAllah, listen to that heartbeat. This must be a great being. And yet, with all these men prodding and poking at it, mocking it, misdescribing it, it stands with patience. It doesn't react or shout. This means that whatever it is, it's a creature with a great soul. It's got compassion. And he stands there and he says, how can I go up and prod and poke such a noble creature? So he stands there in wonderment, not in confusion, because he has seen the nature of the being that he cannot see. In this world, we're constantly being questioned and asked to provide empirical evidence for the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We're being told, how can there be a God if things like this happen? Even though we do most of these things to ourselves. Or they're the consequence of where we happen to be standing at a particular time. Or they say, show me a miracle of God, as they did to the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Produce a miracle now, prove your God exists. They are like the men who can see, but don't use their eyes. They are like the men who can see, but don't use their ears. The Quran says of them, deaf, dumb and blind. They reject what they've never seen as being non-existent. And yet we, like the real blind man, use other senses, use other principles to define what we're looking for and what wishes us to look for Him. In a very real sense, the pious man is blind. He becomes blind to envy, blind to greed, and blind to ignorance. In this he gains a vision that the man obsessed with looking at the world, at the possessions, at what he thinks are realities, can never approach. We are privileged to be thus disabled because we can open our hearts to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala without saying, "Where is your hand? Show me your hand." In the Christian Bible, we have the story of the return of Jesus after the crucifixion. And we get this message there because the apostles say, "Who are you?" And he says, "I'm Jesus." Yeah. Feel the holes. They're demanding an empirical proof of who someone is, and they're denying their senses. And so often people do this. They know what they should be doing as spiritual people, as Muslims, as men and women of faith, but they convince themselves to do something else, often something absurd or harmful. And then they say, everybody else does it. One of the things that we have to acquire blindness to is popular opinion. The right guidance is there. We have it in the Quran, the Sunnah of the Prophet, and the guidance of the 14 Ma'sumin. Why then do we look to somebody who doubts, denies, and questions, and try and answer their questions in the manner they want us to? We have to be firm in our belief and say, if 10,000 people, if 10 million people believe this wrong thing, I will not step with them. I will stick on what I know to be the truth, and do that with the sense of purity and purpose that we have the examples to follow. We can't silence our enemies. We can't silence the enemies of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But we can confront them at every turn with simple truth and good manners. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Wal asri innal insana lafi khusr illa alladhina amanu wa amilus salihat wa tawasaw bil haqqi wa tawasaw bis sabr. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. I was just struck by the thought that maybe we should stop calling this place the chapel and start calling it the cave, since there are but few good companions. Alhamdulillah. Assalamu alaikum. There are many small lessons that we can take, and one is that numbers don't matter. It's the truth, the sincerity of companions and friends that is most valued. Time and time again in history we see small groups of people withstand enormous odds in battle, in politics, just in life. I battle every morning to get out of bed. Friendships are important. There are pages dedicated to the importance of friendship in Plato and other Greek writers. One of the main thrusts of the Quran is to form brotherhoods, the tightest possible friendships with the people around you. And this is something we all need to consider, and to consider the needs of friends and the need for friendship. How often do we ignore what other people are doing and say it's their job? Most people who are doing jobs say, I only do enough to keep the boss quiet, or I just do enough to pay my wages. And yet in Islam we have the opposite. We have the instruction that when you've agreed a price, take a little less than you had agreed, and for the purchaser to give a little more, or to give some more goods in the act of buyer. What for? Especially if you all know you're doing it anyway, we might as well just leave it out and say we fixed a price, fair price, that's it. But we're told no, do something extra so that in shopping we worship. Because it's for our good. It's not just the good of the friend or the person who becomes a friend because you've treated him fairly in business and with generosity. It's for our good. It's a form of mercy. And there's an hadith that I got from Shaykh. He's my sanad on this one. That the one who is most merciful is the one who is most worthy of receiving mercy. Now, we can see that this is a message that elevates the Prophet and the Imams even more than we thought we could elevate their status. But it applies to each of us, and the proof is in the Quran. When discussing retributions, Allah Ta'ala says, "But it is better for you if you are merciful." Not better for the offender, better for the person who is offended, to reduce the punishment of the criminal. And this is one of those things that seems counterintuitive. Most of the people in the world are going around saying, did he only get 27 years in prison? He should never come out. Or somebody gets 6 months and they say he should have got at least 2 years. What are they doing to their hearts? What are they doing to their souls by obsessing on vengeance? Vengeance is that which eats away not just at your heart, but at the bonds of friendship and brotherhood. We can all look around our communities and we can see people who don't or barely speak to each other because of offences that were probably accidental and occurred years before. We have to actively think about people we oppose and treat them with the greatest possible courtesy and warmth. Not to impress them, but to purify our hearts and make them more worthy of worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Have you got all afternoon? The weather's so bad outside, I can keep you here in the warm talking for 6 or 7 hours. It's not just leaders of Central American Marxist republics who can talk for 7 hours without pause. It's part of the house of training. We need friends. But we don't know when we will need a friend. It's not a case of, I'll make friends with this person because I know he's rich and I might need to borrow some money. That's not friendship. But a friend, a brother, it's another hadith from Shaykh Arif. That man has caused so much trouble in this world. That a brother is someone who, if his brother takes something from his pocket, he doesn't care. And yet, how many of us hold on to our wallets as we enter the mosque? Start thinking about, no, I don't want to show them how much money I've got because they'll just try and take it off me for a building project or to buy new library books. We act as if it's our property, and yet it is all the property of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Not that I'm happy if I'm ever caught without change in my pocket, but we need to moderate our idea of possession, and the first moderation is, do I need what I have in my pocket more than my brother needs it? And the great example we've got in Birmingham is the food bank, where Muslim brothers and sisters are all donating to feed strangers in need. When we talk about promoting our faith, our deen, who do people listen to? They listen to people who are their friends. Therefore, it's necessary to become the friend to the whole of humanity. And then some of them will listen to the message of Islam. Some of them may become Muslims, but inshallah, most of them will become better people. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wishes good for the whole of His creation. And if we obstruct that by not doing the generous, the merciful, and the friendly actions, does He not have a right to say to us, did you really think just saying your prayers was enough? Did you really think that just fasting in the month of Ramadan was enough? When you could have done so little more and gained goodness knows how many darajah in paradise. It's a question for each of us. Do I think more of my car or more of the person in the cold? I leave it to your consciences. O Allah, bless Muhammad and his purified family and raise their status with you and in this world. Bless Fatima bint Muhammad, wa Ali ibn Abu Talib, wa al-Hasan